Give us a moment. We're going to start in just a second. Get our camera here. There we go. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Today is Monday, the beginning of a new week. It is the 11th of January. Just let me go on some technical area. Here we go. It is the 11th of January, and it is Monday afternoon as we begin a new Torah reading of the week of Parshas Va'era. The Jewish people's saga continues as they are in the exile of Egypt, and Moses approaching Pharaoh to allow the Jewish people to leave. Who would you say is the most popular fellow in all of the Bible? Moses. But where did Moses come from? Who gave birth to him? His mom, Yocheved. Very little do we know about Yocheved. So little that her name is not even mentioned when Moses was born. In fact, interesting thing is that it just says a daughter of Levi met a man from the tribe of Levi, and they gave birth and had a child. You know, they say a story about once this mom marries off her child, and when she marries off her son, she gives him two ties, a blue tie and a red tie. First Shabbat, the boy comes over to his parents' home for Shabbat dinner, and he's wearing the blue tie. The moment he walks into the door, his mother says, "What, you didn't like the red tie?" So the next Shabbos he decides, I don't know, something's wrong with the camera here. So the next Shabbos he decides, you know what, I'm going to wear my red tie. So he comes in and he's wearing his red tie, and his mom says, "What, you didn't like the blue tie?" So the next Shabbos he says, you know what, I've got to make my mother happy here. I'll put on both ties. He walks inside wearing both ties. And his mom looks at him and he says, I knew your wife was going to make you really crazy. We look at life. We look at things that are going on. We look at Moses. Who brought him into this world? Was his mother Yocheved? But who was his mother Yocheved? So let's learn a little about his mother Yocheved, because the Torah tells us very little about her. She was 130 years old when Moshe was born. Not only that, when she married her husband, when we speak about in the book of Exodus, where it says the daughter of Levi met the fellow from Levi, she was 123 years old. No youngster. Who was Amram? Moses' father. He was actually Yocheved's nephew. And he married his older aunt. Now, Amram was the leader of the Jewish people. I'm sure he could have found a younger woman to marry. Yes, she was a very special woman. She was the daughter of Levi. It was his aunt. Levi was Amram's grandfather. But why did he have to take Yocheved, who was so old? Not only that, let's even take it a step further. The Talmud tells us a fascinating story, because it says in the Torah that the daughter of Levi, the man of Levi, went and married the daughter of Levi. Why does he have to go? Where is he taking? What's happening? And the Talmud explains that when Pharaoh came out with the terrible decree that the Jewish people should throw their children into the Nile River, Amram, who was the leader of the Jewish people, separated from his wife. He said, I'm not going to have children and throw them into the Nile River. And his daughter Miriam, who was Moses' older sister, came to her father and parents and said, I don't understand. Your decree is worse than Pharaoh's. Pharaoh only made a decree against the boys. Your decree is against the boys and the girls. And he looked at his daughter and said, yes, you are a prophetess. And he remarried his wife. And his wife at that time was 123 years old. And he gave birth, and she gave birth to Aaron and Moses. So technically speaking, who is the one that was responsible for this birth of Moses? Was Miriam. If you look at the entire birth of Moses, was by chance. Where did Amram even think that he was going to have a child at 130 years old? For Sarah was 90, and that was considered a miracle. And over here, Yocheved at 130, then she has a child, and Moses. Why such an older woman? Why did the miracles have to happen that she was such in a different way? So let's take a little bit deeper, dig a little deeper into this character of Yocheved. the mother of Moses. When was she born? The interesting, fascinating fact about her is she was the only person left at the time of the exile of Egypt that was born in the land of Israel. She was born right before the Jewish people entered the land of Egypt. On the way down, as Jacob and his family are going down into the land of Egypt, she's born right before the entrance. So Yocheved was a special character that she was still from the previous generation. Just 1 second, we had some interruption here on our YouTube channel. Hold on. For some reason we were signed out. Just give us 1 second. Okay, we're back in. I'm sorry about that. For those that were on the YouTube channel, we had a little interruption. So Yocheved was the only person who was born outside the land of Egypt that was still around during the exile of Egypt. Now let's go back to our debate between Moses and Pharaoh. Moses comes to Pharaoh and says, Pharaoh, let my people go. Pharaoh says, what? Let who go? Moses said, God said, let my firstborn Jew, the people of the Jewish people go. What does Pharaoh respond? I don't know God. Were they just semantics? But in fact, there was a deeper debate between Moses and Pharaoh. What Moses was happening over here was Moses was telling Pharaoh, the world doesn't run on its own. It's not just the Nile River overflowing and giving all its sustenance. There's a God in control to every single step of the way. There is divine providence. And the proof is, look, anybody outside Egypt, they need to pray for rain. They need to depend on all the different things that happen in life. Everything that happens in our life is by divine providence. And therefore, regardless whether you notice it or not, it was all by divine providence. And therefore, Yocheved, the mother of Moses, was the one that ingrained this principle into Moses' head. What does that mean? What does it mean, divine providence? There was once this rabbi was learning, but this fellow considered himself an atheist. And after learning for much time, he became more and more convinced, so to speak, in believing in God. But he still had one problem. How does divine providence work? How is it that God is in control and God orchestrates wherever a person may be and whatever they may do? Well, this fellow once he was from Florida, he ended up in Connecticut for the high holidays, and he was looking for a synagogue to go to. And he was with his friend who was a cardiologist. And they were looking for a certain synagogue. They couldn't find that synagogue, and then they signed up to go to another synagogue, but they had a problem finding it, and they're looking for it, and it's almost sunset. They're rushing before Kol Nidre. And they're on the street, and they see a guy. He looks like he's going to synagogue. So they ask him, do you know where the synagogue is? Well, he tells them, I don't know the synagogue you're looking for, but this new temple synagogue just opened up down the road. You can go there. And they happen to go to this new synagogue. And they're in the new synagogue. They're praying. And while they're praying in this new synagogue, all of a sudden there's a commotion. Somebody just collapsed from a heart attack. He's there with his friend, the cardiologist. The cardiologist right away revives the guy before the ambulance comes. And thank God saves his life. End of story. Seems nice, right? The following year, they go back to that synagogue for the high holidays. And the fellow who he saved his life comes over to him and wants to thank him, appreciates everything that happened. But he asked him, how did you even end up in the synagogue? You guys are from Florida. So he says, we were on our way. We were lost. It was right before sunset. We see this kid walking on the street, and we asked him, and he sent us here. And he said, what does that kid look like? And he calls over his son, and he says, is this the kid? He said, yes. His own son, who was going to another synagogue, told the cardiologist and his friend about this new synagogue, and they ended up saving his dad. His doctor friend, the cardiologist, turned to his friend from Florida and says, you see, now you can go tell your rabbi a nice story of divine providence. Divine providence is God's way of staying anonymous, as they like to say. But at the end of the day, God makes that everything that happens in our life in a way that we should be able to realize that we're there to be able to actualize a certain potential. Who is the one that fed that principle, that taught Moses that whatever happens in life is divine providence? Was Yocheved, his mother. And that was because she was born in the land of Israel She was not subjugated to the enslavement of Egypt, which causes the contraction, the ability to be confined and not understand with outside your box. The word Egypt doesn't just mean a country. And in fact, the word in Hebrew, Egypt, means confinement. The Jewish people, when they were in the land of Egypt, they couldn't think outside the box. They were confined and limited to the way they understood and appreciated things. And therefore, when Moses came to them and said, "You're going to go out of Egypt," they looked at him like he fell from the moon. But how did Moses have the courage to tell the Jewish people that? That was because of his mother. The mother is what gives the person and gives the child the unique quality to live and be anchored in faith and commitment and in a way of life. A mother is, as the very famous saying is, if you want to have good children, you have to have a happy mother. A mother is the foundation of the home. A mother is the one that feeds the child with faith and belief and commitment. A mother is the one that nurtures and shepherds and cultivates the child, not necessarily in the job they're going to take, but in their emotions, in their feelings, and their self-esteem, and in who they are and what they believe. And just like every mother does it to their child, so too Moses did it to Moses' mother gave it to him. From day one, from the moment Moses was born, Moses' mother saw the good, the light that was coming from him. She put him in the basket in the Nile River to stop the decree against the other Jews. She nurtured him in cultivating him with this commitment of recognizing that everything that God does is by divine providence, and that we are not limited to the confinement of Egypt. Things don't just happen of our own as the Nile River coming about. She had that attitude from coming from the land of Israel that we must constantly recognize and have the cognitive understanding that there's a God that's making everything happen every moment and every time. And the same God that put us in Egypt will take us out of Egypt. That all was impressed upon by Moses' mom. And that's why it's so important that Moses should be born in this miraculous way to a mother at 130 years old, because everything about Moses was a miracle. Everything about Moses' life was miraculous. And the way he approached the Jewish people and led them and shepherded them throughout their years in the desert, so too the Jewish people, as they continued and to get them to go out of Egypt, was all because of Moses' mom. So too every person in our life, we all have a mother. And the Jewish woman is the most important character of the home. She is the one that cultivates and nurtures their children, that they too can be a Moses. They too are miraculous. Every single one of us can be a miracle. And it is in the merit of the Jewish woman that our forefathers came out of the land of Egypt. It is also in the merit of the Jewish women today, of the mothers of all of us, that make us the people who we are. All of us can be that cheerful mother as Yocheved. All of us can be a Moses. Let that Moses within you shine, and you'll all come out of Egypt. God bless you. Have a great day. How many children did Levi have? Just to answer one of the questions there, he had 3 boys. According to some commentaries, he had 2 wives, and the 3 boys were born from one wife, and Yocheved was then born from the other wife. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Wishing you the very best. If anybody has any comments and questions, feel free to always put it in the comments, and I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. And if you have any comments or questions or further discussions of what you want other lunch breaks and classes to be about, feel free to email me, put them in the comments, and we will hopefully get to them. Wishing you the very best for a wonderful day. See you again tomorrow at 1 p.m.